The Marlins are coming off a terrible week in which they went 1-5. But can Agustin Ramirez make an impact this week against the Reds?
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I've been podcasting about the Marlins for almost 3 seasons now. You can hit me up on X at Jeremiah Geiger 2. And thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Make sure you're subscribed and leave a like, leave a comment in the comments section. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And on today's show, I am joined by Tyler Boronski, freelance media journalist down in South Florida. Tyler, welcome in. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, Jeremiah. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate the invite and, happy to talk a little Marlins with you today.
Absolutely. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the Reds-Marlins series. 3 games, kind of break down what goes into that because the Marlins called up top prospect Agustin Ramirez. What's the next wave of prospects looking like for this team? And also some trade talk. We have Sandy trade rumors. That's all year long, it seems like. But the Jesus Luzardo trade, talk a little bit about that. What were some of the best and worst trades from the Peter Bendix era as we're seeing the fruition of one of the trades, the Jazz Chisholm trade, as Agustin Ramirez makes his debut on Tuesday or Monday night. This episode will be out on Tuesday. But first off, Tyler, let's talk about this Marlins team. They're coming off a really rough week. They went 1-5, but they're back in South Florida. They're back at Lone Depot, and they have an opportunity to face a scorching hot Reds team that just put up 24 against the Orioles. What's your viewpoint right now on this team heading into a new week?
Well, it's good that they brought up Augustine Ramirez because they need a little bit of a jolt right now. Even though Javier Sanoa really kind of saved the day yesterday, and we had that late comeback 2 games ago with Liam Hicks and Dane Myers didn't quite complete it. Obviously, they dug themselves in a tough hole. It had been a tough stretch for the Marlins as of late, pitching. Really none of the starters besides like Max Meyer, I would say, has done well at all. No one's going deep into games. You obviously had the injuries too with Griffin Conine, Derek Hill recently, obviously Fortes if you look way back. So they needed a jolt right now. They needed a spark. I think they're happy to be back home, and obviously a lot of attention on Agustin Ramirez. Well warranted though. He's been mashing in the minor leagues. Someone that was the big prospect in that Jazz Chisholm trade. So I think a lot of fans are excited to see him up. I know some maybe even wanted him up, earlier, or at least even make the team out of spring training. But excited to see his bat and what he can do at this level.
The big thing for Ramirez as he makes his major league debut is the defense and how he's going to handle the catching duties. He's thrust into the duties immediately. His major league debut will be as a catcher. I expect him to be used as catcher for the majority of the time that he's up here. They have a lot of decisions to make with Nick Fortes going to come back from the injured list. Liam Hicks is getting playing time. But this Reds team, I look at the pitching matchups for the Marlins. You mentioned the pitching was just dreadful last week. I talked about that on yesterday's show. Sandy Alcantara does get an opportunity to rebound after a really rough start. Edward Cabrera, he's going to take the ball in the middle game of the series. I think it's a really important start for him because fans are getting anxious with Edward Cabrera. They're running out of patience with him. Sandy Alcantara, not so much. We know what he brings to the table. He is an ace. But it's been a worrisome start. I mean, to see Sandy only pitch 2 innings and get blown up like that, and it just feels, coming off of Tommy John surgery, like something's missing from him. So I'm really excited to see how he responds. You have any thoughts with Sandy? Am I overreacting to it? Because it just doesn't feel the same right now.
It doesn't feel the same, but I do think we got to be a little patient. I think there's a lot just happening with the guy lately besides obviously not just the baseball aspect, not playing that long and getting thrust back into it. I also like to look at the human side a little bit too. He just came back from the paternity list. Like, it's tough when you got a newborn too, and dealing with that off the field. Plus, obviously, the trade rumors surrounding you. Everyone's kind of having these conversations, knowing that he hasn't looked quite the same, hasn't gone that deep into games yet. But I think just give it a little bit of time with him. I think the biggest thing, even the stuff, while it might be a tick below the fastball and the sinker, like, it still looks pretty good. I think the biggest thing is just like can't find the strike zone, can't finish when he gets guys to 2 strikes, which I think just comes with time to get back to used to playing Major League Baseball and leading a rotation. So, but yeah, obviously, like, everyone's kind of just waiting to see when we'll see a little bit of the Sandy of the old. So, and I think Peter Bendix is waiting for that too. That way you can really show teams that, he's ready to go and, make that trade that we all know is kind of inevitable.
When you were down in spring training, you got an opportunity to see these guys close up. When it comes specifically to the pitching staff, I know Max Meyer has been great to start the season, and how Augustine worked with the pitchers in camp. Did anything stand out to you that gives you optimism defensively? I know a lot of the focus is on his bat, but what does the eye test look like?
Defensively for Augustine?
Yeah.
Working with pitcher? Nothing in particular stood out, to be honest with you. I know he did work with Max, who's catching tonight in his MLB debut, I believe in 1 start against the Mets. But obviously that is, a concern with him, but, can it be any worse than what we've seen already this season?
Right.
Nick isn't the greatest defender. Rob Brantley, love the guy, but, not so much there. So you kind of just know what to expect with him. And frankly, I think we all can really agree that, like, he's probably going to move off the catching position later in his career, probably a first baseman DH type. But for this year, you deal with him defensively there because the bat is worth it at the end of the day and
100%.
Can provide that power that really this lineup needs so desperately. With Matt Mervis really being the only power threat in this lineup, so Augustine Ramirez provides that. So you take the good with the bad there.
I'm curious to see how the Marlins handle Ramirez in the lineup, because to me, this might be an overreaction. And this is just, the fan in me saying, I want this guy to succeed so well. But I look at his highlights in the minor leagues. You look at the exit velocities, and it's just, he's such a good hitter. He has such a good approach. Now, I know Major League pitching is so different from AAA, but the focus on the defense, to me, it really doesn't matter. As long as he's hitting, he should be in the lineup every day, whether that's at first base or DH. Now, the Marlins, obviously, they're going to want him to catch, but they do have Joe Mack coming up through the minor leagues, and he's on a tear. This Marlins team is young on the Major League side of things, but also throughout the minor leagues, we saw a lot of impressive players throughout spring training that are in AAA, AA. We're going to talk about the next wave of prospects. The big call-up was Agustin Ramirez, but what's the next wave? Who else is going to join him and really impact this Marlins team? That's going to come up right after this. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team like the Marlins or diving into player props, maybe over-under on Augustine home runs, just a suggestion there. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props, and that, of course, is with basketball. So after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. If you're an everyday listener, thank you for being a part of the Locked On Marlins crew. If this is your first episode, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any other future episodes. I'm here with Tyler Boronski. We're talking about the potential call-ups in addition to Augustine Ramirez. I know Tyler was down there in spring training. He could see the talent of guys like Max Acosta, a lot of these young players for the Marlins. Any guys stand out to you, and who do you think will be the next major call-up for this team?
Well, I will say the next major call-up that really is like an Augustine Ramirez type. It might be a little bit of ways. It might be until like Joe Mack makes his debut. But in terms of guys I could see coming up soon, Max Acosta is a good example. Really good defensively. Saw that throughout spring training. Obviously, Davison De Los Santos, another big bat at AAA right now. Came over in the Jake Berger trade, I believe. So another strong contender that's borderline MLB ready. But always the fun ones when it comes to the Marlins is the guys really at A ball right now, and low A guys like Thomas White. Always looking at him. Starlin Caba, who came over in the Luzardo trade. Even a long ways away, but Andrew Salas, the young kid there is
talented.
Is very talented, very mature. I don't know what I was doing at my age at that time, but he's
he's like 16, 17 years old.
Unbelievable, man.
Professional baseball for the last 3 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, but I think those are the real
blue chippers,
chippers, exactly.
Right.
Guys with the Marlins. So that's a little bit of ways away. But you could see guys like Max and De Los Santos, in the big league sometime soon.
Yeah, Acosta is the one that stands out to me because, I look at Ramirez and he had such a good spring training that a lot of fans were saying, oh, he could make the opening day roster. And that wasn't realistic. He has to get time as the catcher. They wanted the service time. That's a factor. But Acosta to me feels like somebody that could force his way into the lineup. That's really what I felt like Ramirez did. Is that you look at the exit velocity, his approach, just the entire package when it comes to a hitter, at a premium position. Ramirez is like, there you go. Put him on the lineup. He doesn't really have anything left to prove offensively. Now, Costa, I kind of start to feel the same way due to his hot start in AAA. Xavier Edwards is the current shortstop for the Marlins, but his glove just isn't on par to Acosta. I don't think that's going to keep the Marlins from potentially calling him up. And I like what this team is doing, what Bendix is doing in bringing in young guys, giving them a shot instead of just, putting out the same retread guys, veterans who really don't have a future with this team or that are aging. And I think we're going to start to see that a little more often as well.
Well, I think you're even seeing the rotating door right now on the big league level. Guys like Ronnie Simon right now, Graham Pauley. You could see Max Acosta in that next wave, of getting an opportunity. And that is the good part about this organization for guys like that that you wouldn't get in other organizations. You get a chance to play, and you could do it at the big league level. So I agree. Obviously, the glove is is already major league ready. So the fact he's having that hot of a start in AAA offensively so far just shows that, there really isn't that much left to prove, and wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets his chance and his shot soon.
And Joe Mack, you mentioned Joe Mack. He, to me, is the true catcher of the future. He has a really good bat, probably not as high a ceiling in terms of average like Agustin Ramirez, but he brings a ton of power, and defensively, he has an absolute rocket behind the plate. Joe Mack's a name that I've heard, possibly at the end of 2025, making his debut. I tend to push back on that idea, Tyler, because he really hasn't had much experience above AA. He could get a call up to AAA, but I know AA, the Southern League, is really tough for hitters. But take your time with Mack. I don't want his development to be rushed. Sometimes we get so excited with these top prospects like Augustine Ramirez, who I do think is ready for the major leagues. I think he was ready in spring training. But Joe Mack is somebody, just give him some time. He did have a breakout season last year, and he's on fire this year, but don't rush him,
Sure. And then you even look at the big league roster, there's really not many spots to put him at too, even if he was to be called up later this year, because you need to keep Liam Hicks for the entire year to keep him on the squad. You're assuming Ramirez is staying now. Nick Fortes is going to be back. There really isn't even a spot for him to really play right now. So yeah, just let him take his time in the minor leagues. Like you said, kind of flourish at AA. Though I could see maybe getting a call to AAA soon. Now that
I think he should.
Yeah, got called up, but the point is give this guy some time. He's your top position player right now in terms of the minor leagues that you want to get right, and so don't give that service time yet, and just let the guy be ready by the time you want to call him up.
And then last topic on this new wave of prospects, I think the Marlins should start calling up some of their bullpen pieces. The bullpen has really been a rough spot for the Marlins. It's inconsistent. Clayton McCullough doesn't utilize the bullpen in the same manner like we've seen previous years. There's no set 7th inning guy or 8th inning guy or closer. When you have a lead, I really don't know who's coming in. I've seen George Soriano come in the game in a 1-run game, and now he's back up.
I was going to say.
It's like they called up Cade Gibson last week, and now he's back down. He was a lefty. They only have one left-handed reliever. I look at someone like Josh Simpson or Josh Eknes. Like, these guys, I think could potentially bring more juice and firepower to the bullpen than some of the guys they currently have. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that because, right now it is no one really has a set role.
Right.
Everyone's getting their chance at leverage situations. A lot of guys also have to just throw multiple innings because none of the starters are going deep. So you just got a mismatch of, there's really no consistency there. Some news closing every time. Like you said, Soriano, was getting high leverage situations, which I don't know why that guy ever was in any case. But so I think the two guys you mentioned there, for sure, deserve a shot at this point and could really, contribute and actually stick and get some just stability that this bullpen desperately needs at this point.
Yeah, the stability is a perfect word because it's so unstable. Which it's funny because at the start of the year before spring training, I really thought the bullpen could be a strength for the Marlins. It really hasn't been that at all. Like Fauché is just kind of took a huge step back. Yeah. Lake Bakker's been really good.
He's been really good.
But he doesn't get the opportunity really to close games. Like, I don't know why McCullough doesn't want Lake in the 9th or 10th, and he instead rolls with Bender or Fauché or even Tinoco. Yeah. I'm a little iffy on still. I don't know. His slider's getting just destroyed right now.
Right. No, I agree with that. I've always been a guy that just let's stick with one guy. And, Lake has been the guy that's,
he's been great.
One of the best by far. So obviously they haven't been in many situations where, they can be closing out games. Too. So that was part of it too. But no, I've been a little confused as well by how the bullpen's been handled by Clayton. Clayton is a good guy, but there has been some, questionable decisions just when it comes to, again, how he's handled the bullpen, some of the starting lineup decisions, and how that's different every game. So, and some in-game decisions. So there's been definitely some questions when it comes to management with Clayton McCullough so far. But I would like to see that too, and I would like to see Lake, maybe get that nod or get a chance to close and maybe possibly earn that closer role and be that guy for them because he's definitely performed well up to this point.
Has Clayton elaborated on his lineup decisions or his use of the bullpen when you've had a chance to ask these questions? Because it really seems like he's trying to figure out the best combination every single day, and he still hasn't got it yet.
I think that's what it is. I think he's just still feeling out his team,
the groove,
and feeling out what do I have in this group. And maybe it's been a little too much just change every day because even lineup wise, you see Stowers, for example, he switches all the time where he's in the lineup. There's just been a lot of changes each day. So no, I'm there tomorrow, so maybe something to ask him about more in depth. But I think at this point he's just still trying to figure out his team and what he has,
which makes sense. It's a first year manager. It's definitely not an easy job being a manager of a team as young as the Marlins when there's all these moving pieces. And especially when it comes to trade speculation, we don't know what this team is going to look like in August. When the trade deadline comes and goes, Peter Bendix could be working some trades, picking up the phones. We're going to talk about these trades that Peter Bendix has made the good ones, the bad ones, but also the future ones. Because, of course, Sandy Alcantara is a Marlin, and he might not be a Marlin for the entirety of the season. That's coming up right after this. Thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. And if you're on the go, remember that Locked On Marlins is on all the major podcast platforms. So leave a 5-star rating over there as well. And we're talking the best, the worst trades in recent times for the Marlins under the Peter Bendix era, because Agustin Ramirez was a key acquisition in a major trade acquired last season for the Jazz Chisholm in the Jazz Chisholm deal with the Yankees. I like that trade, especially, of course, if Ramirez tears it up in the major leagues. What do you think about the overall aggressiveness of Peter Bendix when it comes to trading players?
Yeah, I've liked it so far at this point. Yeah, you're right. He's definitely not afraid to make deals.
No,
He
he's
doesn't
not.
even, you can look back at the Luis Ariz trade last year. Like, what was it, May that he made that
Unexpected.
trade?
Maybe,
So, yeah. So if he feels like he has, the right package, like he has no problem pulling the trigger. And I think he understands, where this organization's at. Just rebuild that farm system, but really get some, higher end guys, and they're getting that with guys like Augustine Ramirez, who we traded for. You've seen Cava, who they traded for in the Luzardo trade. So you're stocking up that type of talent, which they needed. So I've liked what he's done so far, and I think we'll be seeing more of that this year for sure.
Definitely. I don't think Bendix is ever, unwilling to consider a trade, no matter what time of the year it is. Like, we saw the Luzardo trade in the winter meetings, and going back to the Ramirez deal, that was my favorite one because I loved Jazz, and it was really hard to see him go. But I think that can prove to be a really good deal. If Ramirez pans out to be what we think he can be, you also have Jared Cerna, who is a really good prospect as well, playing in the middle infield. But then you have, like, I can agree. I can get behind that deal. What I really have trouble getting behind is the Jesus Luzardo deal. We just saw him against the Phillies. He went 7 innings, absolutely dominated the Marlins, and it feels like Peter Bendix rushed that deal. And there's going to be a contrasting of opinions when it comes to this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But I felt like Luzardo was dealt at a horrible time, coming off that injury. And I like Starlin Caba as a prospect. You've talked about him. I really do. He's smooth defensively. He has a great approach. He draws his walks. But the quality of a pitcher with Jesus Luzardo, who's currently leading the National League or all of MLB in WAR for pitchers, it felt like you could have gotten a lot more for him. That's where I stand.
Right. No, and that's how a lot of fans feel the sentiment, and I definitely understand that too. As much as we do like Cava, like, you feel like you could have got a little more for him, and just allow him to build a stock, Jesus Luzardo, and then see what you could, a similar Sandy situation, see what you could flip, maybe going towards the trade deadline and get a little more. So I definitely understand that sentiment. Obviously, he's still young Luzardo, and it's tough to see him doing it for your division rivals. But yeah, I definitely understand that sentiment from fans, and frankly, I do agree from that standpoint that they could have got a little more for Luzardo at the time, or should have kept him to hopefully get a little more, go into the trade deadline.
Well, they now have really one major trade chip left, and I'm gonna say Sandy Alcantara. This kind of defines the Marlins season. If Miami falls out of contention, and I know they're struggling right now, they suffered a major injury with Griffin Conine. The Sandy Alcantara trade talks are just going to escalate from here on out. So when it comes to Sandy, I don't think Peter can really rush this deal because he has the control left. It felt like he rushed the Luzardo deal. The thing that I go back to is with the years of control with Sandy Alcantara, you don't have to trade him right now, especially like we talked about earlier, he's struggling. So how much does that factor into other teams? I don't know. I don't know if other teams are going to have the worries that Sandy's not the same pitcher and can't get back to that Cy Young level, because I think he can. But you have to handle this really carefully. The timing of it and also the return.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, going into the year, I think everyone said, oh, they could trade him by May, honestly. But at this point, the fact that he hasn't, gone deep enough yet, I think now that's pushing, okay, if you're going to make the trade, it's going to be closer to the trade deadline. But I still think, you have to make the deal even with the years of control. Like, they're just not going to be really contending in the next couple of years, the Marlins. So I still think you said a high price for him is just, it's just a push a little later when they're going to trade him now than I think people maybe thought they were going to. But you still need to get a team's at least their top, like their number 1 or 2, maybe a couple at least, plus a couple all their top 100 guys in the package. Like, it has to be a top tier package for a guy like Sandy that has those years of control. But yeah, I think it's just shaking off the rust to show teams like, okay, I think the trade's still going to happen regardless. It's just, I think teams just want to see it, once or twice, a version of old Sandy, which I believe we will get at some point this season.
I do too.
It's really a matter of when. And once that is shown in a start or two, I think that's when, you'll see the trade talks for Sandy escalate even more so.
You think it happens around the deadline, like deadline day, like it's one of those trades?
Not deadline day, but I could see it like, that week or week out, before then. I think it's going to be closer now to then, where going into the year, I was one of those, like, I could see them trading him in May or June, like, just.
Yeah, I could too, because of the aggressiveness.
That's what I was expecting, to be honest. But the fact it hasn't gone off to an amazing start, I think now it's going to just time out to the normal, deadline.
The one thing that I think could happen, and that would what would shock, Major League Baseball and the Marlins fan base, would be, let's say a team out there like the Cubs or the Mets see Sandy struggles and say, okay, maybe the price isn't as high right now, while everybody else isn't picking up the phone because they're still trying to figure out if they're contenders. They say, all right, we're all in on Sandy. Here's this deal. It's too good to pass up. That is where I could see Bendix go, whoa, all right, I kind of got to take this because they're overpaying for somebody that they want that badly. Because I think internally there's teams like the Cubs or Mets that really covet Sandy. They're not going to go out and openly say it unless you're New York, in which Juan Soto saying, bring Sandy to... I hated that. That was weird.
That situation. Yeah.
But it could be like one of those deals, like you just wake up and it's like, oh, wait, Sandy's traded? Like, I've seen it before.
No, for sure. But I could see like a team like the Cubs now, especially with the Justin Steele injury, and they got the prospects to make this trade. That's the thing. You got to have the guys too. That's why, like, I don't see him like people talk about like the Yankees for a while with Sandy. I'm like, they don't have the farm system to trade for Sandy, so you're limited. You got really like Cubs, Mets to an extent, Red Sox, like a few teams that could actually pull off the trade and the package that the Marlins need to accept. Even if you don't see like the best version of Sandy, like it's still going to be a high asking price regardless.
Absolutely.
I could see those type of franchises being aggressive for sure.
I think the other player that could be in trade talks as we wrap this show up here, Jesus Sanchez. His time in Miami feels limited because of the youth movement. Bendix loves bringing in the younger guys to compete, which I love too. And I'm a big Sanchi fan. It's just with the emergence of Kyle Stowers, Dane Myers, Sanoha, who can play in the outfield, Sanchez is kind of limited defensively, and he's expendable. And he's really not a building block of this team moving forward. I could see Sanchez being another guy they trade at the deadline also.
No, for sure. And I think you kind of touched on it there, but I think the Stowers impact these first couple weeks and just showing that, maybe he could be a guy that sticks around and could be a guy maybe to be part of this core. Not a guy leading it by any means, but like part of this next wave for the Marlins. I think that definitely makes Sanchez more expendable there because of the emergence of Kyle Stowers.
Absolutely. And with that, guys, Tyler, I want to thank you for coming on today's show. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And until next time, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.